But my beats, they are hard.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the BCSN Sports Wrap. My name is Brian Fulford, and joining me, as always, my partner in the backcourt, A.D. Drew. A.D., we are recording this on the last day of 2020, my friend. Finally, we've made it to the end. We've made it. How you feeling about that?
Thank God it's over.
Right?
It is over. I don't want to see anything with 2020 ever again, because my vision will never be 2020, considering that I wear contacts. So I don't want to see nothing with. I need 21s, just like I'm at the casino from now on.
I don't want to see anything with a -19 on it for the rest of this year, and hopefully next year. How about that?
So as an old Indianapolis Colts fan, you're gonna throw away that Johnny Unitas jersey right there since he wore number 19.
I'm 18. I'm 18. I don't have anything that says that's Baltimore Colts. That's Baltimore Colts. Indianapolis is 18. All right. Maybe let's make sure we're clear on that.
There you go.
Hey, we want to. It's been a great 2020. We want to thank everyone. If you have watched or listened to any of our shows this past year, we want to thank you for being a part of the Black College Sports Network, Jericho Broadcasting Networks, and also everything that we've done here with the Sports Wrap. Also partnering up with Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab this year. All of the conversations that we've had with athletic directors and coaches and alumni, and most recently, we just had our conversation with our first university president. Shout out to Dr. Makur Abdullah from Virginia State University, who joined us for a conversation that you and I had, Drew, with, of course, Dr. Cavill. Kenyatta was in there with us. And so that one we just dropped probably a day before this one will drop. So hopefully you will, wherever we have our shows, I mean, obviously we're everywhere. We're on iHeart, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. Everywhere you listen to podcasts, you can go listen to it. You can go to my.net on the website. You can watch the interview. If you have the Jericho Broadcast Networks app, which you can get at the Google and Apple Play Store by just searching my JBN or my BCSN, you can watch it there. And it will also be on YouTube as well, on our Jericho Broadcast Network's YouTube page. So make sure to go check out that interview. We get into talking a little bit about some of the recent cancellations with the CIAA, as well as some of the great things happening with Virginia State. So Drew, real quick, a thought. Any thoughts from that conversation that we had?
No, it was eye-opening, to say the least. We've talked to all different kinds of people and genres of people throughout the couple of years we've been doing the Sports Wrap show, and just to be able to add a university president to our list of people that we have talked to is, it's tremendous, Brian, and but I do have one question for you with that, Brian.
Yeah.
Like you said, you gave the whole list of people who we've talked to as far as the different genres of professionalisms that we talked to. What's next on our list for 21? Who do we want to knock off of our list in 21 as far as the type of person that we talk to here on the Sports Rap Show?
I think we're ready to move into the pro athlete / celebrity entertainer realm. I think that's where we're ready to move. Somebody at that level, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for me, I was gonna throw out. I would love to talk to somebody from one of the big boy sports networks, and just kind of talk shop with one of those people from one of the big 4-letter networks, and just kind of once again talk shop and see how they cover things versus how we cover things here at the grassroots level.
Well, I don't even care about the 4-letter network. And if you're talking about the mothership, I don't even care about them. I think just in what we call, what we might consider more mainstream sports media, I've got a great candidate. I won't share it, but I've been paying attention to some of the work that he's done, and he's a big HBCU advocate. So, but I'm a big media groupie. I hate to say that, but I am a sports media groupie because I grew up listening to sports announcers, broadcasters. I am that guy. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm embarrassed that I didn't even think of that, because that's what I listen to. I listen probably to more. I listen to other people talk about sports, and I probably listen to music or even listen to myself or ourselves talk about stuff. I probably listen to other people than I do even us, and this is what we do and enjoy doing, is talking about sports. So there we go. That's a great list, short list that we can start working on for 2021. I would say the biggest takeaway from Dr. Abdullah, the conversation we had, Drew, I had to be reminded that the Division II level, the priorities at the Division II level is a little bit different than the Division I. And because we have this vast this variety of, we have schools in Division I, we have schools in Division II, we have schools in NAIA, and everybody is not at the same financial level. Everybody doesn't have the same financial resources. Obviously, you always bring up the scholarships, and that's a big reason why we have separate polls that we do, and how that factors in. And sometimes I think that gets lost in our conversations that we have, because everything is not equal. And sometimes when it's not equal, it doesn't translate, I guess, on the playing field and competition level. And so, I mean, in the end, I want to see all of our HBCUs be competitive at their levels. I want to see us be competitive in the mid-major world. I want to see us be competitive in the FCS world. I want to see us be competitive at the Division II levels. I want to see us be competitive in the NAIA levels, because I think that helps us. And so I that was a great reminder in that conversation with him. And I think it was just great to be able to talk to somebody who is the actual decision maker. We, in the conversation, we talked to coaches who are the decision makers of their teams and the programs. We talked to the athletic directors who are the decision makers of their athletic programs.
But they're the man next to the man.
Exactly. They're the man next to the man. For our world, we're concerned about athletics, right? So it was cool hearing that university presidents talk about athletics in the same way that you, me, Dr. Cavill, Roy, all of us
the guys at the barbershop,
they amongst themselves, they are sports fans, and they talk about sports because I think they understand that their sports is that what we call, it's the front step to their university. Yeah. It's the financial marketing engine that can open doors to all these other great things that your university does. And, you know, because we as Americans put so much value in athletics, you know, having a good athletic program is important. But again, you don't want to lose yourself by doing things that aren't safe, aren't healthy for the student athletes, or just in general, what's the word I'm looking for? That you're cheating or that aren't fair, aren't competitive. Okay, you know. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. So let's get into, before we get into, and here's what we're gonna do on this particular episode. Drew and I are going to break down some of the top stories from the year. It is a tough task because even though there's no sports, there's so many other things that happened. I remember, Drew, that was, I think, our big worry on March 11th or March 12th. And we talked about it maybe a few days after, like, what in the world are we going to do? And I think
that didn't take long to figure out.
You're right. I think and I've heard that from every media creator within Black college sports, and shout out to all of them, you know, from the Black College Experience to Inside the HBCU Sports Report to Urban Media Today, HBCU Sports, HBCU Game Day. I'm just going to shout everybody out that I can think of, our people inside the HBCU Sports Lab, everybody who's been a part of trying to create content to keep us all engaged about Black college athletics. I mean, props to everybody. I mean, because this has been, I think everybody probably at one point, Drew, we were all trying to figure out, what the hell are we going to do? What's this going to look like? And so we, just like universities, were challenged. And I think this whole thing, Drew, is just going to be stronger when 2021 comes around and we do actually get back to on the field competition and such, and covering that, because a lot of the stuff, of course, that we covered was off the field types of things. You know,
and it allowed an opportunity for people to reevaluate, reprioritize certain things, and take a look at some of the other things that affect HBCU lives and HBCU sports outside of the vacuum.
Yeah. So we will, of course, we have a top five. You know, we do top five. That's what we do. You know,
that's what we do.
Yes, sir. We do top five.
Black College Sports Network.
So we have a top five, our top five stories of 2020. And we've got a few other stories that we think are what we call those like honorable mention stories, right?
Yes. The best of the rest.
Best of the rest, exactly. But before we do that, we gotta go through, and we did have another week of HBCU basketball. And this past week, we only had really the Division I level teams playing. So we did have a men and women's players of the week. And so we'll start with the ladies first. And for the second time in this season, our HBCU player of the week, large school, is Ms. Jayla Thornton from Howard University. Drew, tell us about Jayla and the week that she had last week.
Jayla's a senior guard, 5'9", from Newark, New Jersey. She scored 29 points, chipped in 5 rebounds and 2 steals while leading the Lady Bison to a victory over Richmond in non-conference action. And this game happened the Monday before Christmas, which was within our at the opening of our nomination period. Our period goes from Monday through Sunday. And just as Bryan said, this is her second honor this week this year for Howard. For the season, she's at 17.2 points and 3.2 rebounds. And I think I mentioned that she's a senior guard, but Bryan, I have one question for you. Can we get somebody who does not wear a Lady Bison uniform to win our large school women's player of the week, because all three of them for this year have been from Howard. And no, Howard is not the only large school that's playing women's college basketball right now. Just,
Well,
just full
let me help
disclosure.
you. Let me correct you there, because it hasn't been all. We've had a Delta Devil in there, Drew. Don't forget about a Delta Devil.
You are correct. Three of the
Last
four.
week, I mean, just last week, we had a Delta Devil.
Three of
Zakiya
the four.
Mahmoud.
Three of the four have been from Howard
Yeah, so I don't know. That
at this
might be a
point of
little
the season.
that might be a little biased there on the whoever the people are who are putting together this player of the week list. There might be some bias there.
No bias. The numbers are the numbers, and the performances are the performance. But I will tell you one thing that has helped the players from Howard get to the front is that they are winning.
Yes.
They were currently ranked number 2 in the last BCSN ranking, and based upon their play that they've had over the last week and a half, they may be the new number 1 team in the ranking when the rankings close on this Sunday.
Teaser. There's a teaser for you. All right. Well said, Drew. So moving over to the large school men's player of the week comes from Hampton University. As Hampton, the other HU, they got a pair of wins last week against Charleston Southern in the Big South. And that's something that the Big South is doing, Drew, where they're doing those back-to-back, real similar to, I think, what the SIAC
was going to do, yes. The men will be at home playing one school in a back-to-back, while the women are on the road playing the same school in a back-to-back.
Yeah, so those will be interesting to kind of see once you see the results from the first game. Interesting to watch what happens in the rematch. It's burned me already, just to kind of put that out there. But last week for Hampton, those who know, for Hampton, it is Mr. Deion Warren, who had a great week in 2 games for Hampton against Charleston Southern. Drew, break those performances down.
Senior guard 6'6" from Buffalo, New York, averaged let me say that again, Brian. He averaged 22-7, along with 3 steals for the Pirates last week. In the game on the 21st, he scored 29 points with 8 rebounds, leading the Pirates to a 70-67 win. The next day, he had 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and 5 steals in a 2-point game. 70-68 was the score in that particular game, Brian.
So Hampton started 2-0 in conference, and
3-0. They actually started 3-0 in conference.
Well, I was gonna get to that. That was last week. I was gonna get to this week, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say they this week, as we're recording this, they got out to a 3-0 start by winning the first of 2 against Gardner-Webb. And then, unfortunately, on the day that we're recording this on New Year's Eve, they lost in the rematch game. So they are, I believe, 3-1 in conference. I'd have to look and see where that puts them. I'd have to look and see where that puts them on the conference scale. But that's a good start. Good start for Hampton to start the season in the Big South.
What do you think about the Big South getting their conference play started so early compared to a lot of the conferences out there? We see that the SWAC and the MEAC won't start until after the new year, along with a lot of the other conferences. Even the big boy conferences will not start until after the new year.
There are some big conferences that have started. The Big Ten, the ACC, I know for sure started early, and I think the SEC started last week and this week. So that's a rather new thing that I think has started, because I think a lot of these schools went to the longer conference schedule to try to play more conference games. I think that was what I know. For example, I'm thinking that's what the Big Ten did last year. But I think in order to try to fit in more games, because you only have really January, February, because you have
only
to
got
have
so
your
many dates.
Yeah, you have to have your conference tournament probably about the first or second week of
Second
March.
week of March. Second week of March is usually when the big boys have it.
Yeah, so you've got to get it in, and based on the timing and the schedules, that just means you have to bump the conference tournament or the conference schedule a week or two before the new year. So I actually like it in a normal year. Obviously, this has been a little bit challenging, but everybody wasn't going to play a lot of non-conference games this year.
Right, and then it gives more time. It gives more time if there are cancellations, postponements. Instead of trying to squeeze them in, you've got a little bit more time with the calendar to play with also.
Yeah, I think what, for example, North Carolina A&T has been able to do by scheduling 10 non-conference games, that's amazing. I don't know. I feel like North Carolina Central has scheduled quite a few as well. They've been able to play maybe 6 or 7. I could be off on that. But going into conference play, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out for a team like A&T who has 10 games under their belt versus a team like, say, I'm just going to throw a team out there who's still playing. I got to make sure I say it right.
Well, let's go to the SWAC and go to the total flip side. Alabama State, who will not play a conference game in their conference.
Right, and
I mean a non-conference game.
Right, and who has played quite a few games? Maybe Prairie View A&M has played about maybe 5 games.
Mississippi, I believe Mississippi Valley, either Mississippi Valley or UAPB have played a significant number of games. I think both of them actually have.
Yeah, now maybe they didn't need to. Maybe they didn't need to, but they played a lot of games.
Yeah.
Didn't need to, maybe.
Got a lot of checks.
A lot of checks, but maybe they didn't need to play so many. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that makes a difference. And speaking of the SWAC, you brought it up. That'll be interesting to see. We've already had a couple of postponements to the start of the SWAC season, which was supposed to start Saturday. At the beginning of January, the first weekend, first Saturday. I believe you had Texas Southern men, and if I read the press release, if I recall it correctly, was it Grambling? I'm just shooting off the hip here. I don't know if you're able to.
Alabama A&M, Texas Southern, Grambling are the 3 big ones that come to my head without having the article in front of me.
Okay, you're saying those are the ones that delayed their
start of the season. And Texas Southern. Did I say Texas Southern?
Yeah, but isn't that's Texas Southern women though? See. Yeah, I'm pulling it up now since we started down this traveling path because you mentioned the SWAC. I'm forced to now go to the SWAC page and see if who's been who's been delayed and who hasn't been. So Texas Southern women, they paused their basketball activities. That was one of the things that happened. They did pause their basketball activities, and that was in women's basketball. I was trying to see if I could quickly find out who on the men's side, but I think you were correct. So I'm gonna get out of that because I know that was not planned, and it just only slows the show down, Drew. So see, you got to be prepared if you're gonna throw out new stuff at me, and then yell at me about time. All right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quick pause, and we'll give a shout out to some of our advertisers, our sponsors, things of that nature. And when we come back
for 21.
When we come back, we'll start talking about some of the top stories that didn't make our top 5 from 2020. You're watching and listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and A.D. We'll be back right after these words.
Because the fight isn't over yet.
You will see me choose to protect my community by wearing a face cover.
And even with my face covered,
you will see me.
As a son.
As a man with a never quit attitude.
As a fighter for change.
Join me in wearing a face cover.
To help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness
that has the power to make a big difference.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford, A.D. Drew here, and we are getting ready to go into some of our top stories from the 2020 year. Before I do that, of course, I want to remind you, make sure you're following the Black College Sports Network and the HBCU or the BCSN Sports Wrap on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook at MyBCSN1. The number 1 is our handle. You can also find the Sports Wrap on Facebook as well. Just search for BCSN Sports Wrap. And that's also how you can search and find our podcast. Our podcast is everywhere you listen to podcasts: Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Overcast, and even iHeartRadio. At all of those sites, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following us. Give a thumbs up and a like. If you're already a part of that podcast network, you would have also gotten our latest podcast, our conversation with Dr. Makur Abdullah, the president of Virginia State University, as he chatted with us and Dr. Cavill regarding the things happening at within the CIAA. Of course, he is the chair of the board for the CIAA, as well as the generous gift donation by philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, which, Drew, that has to go in there sort of as a sidebar of one of the honorable mention stories of 2020. It came at the end of the year, but its significance nonetheless was a great Christmas gift for the 17 HBCUs that she blessed at the end of the year. Of course, I think there was another half dozen or maybe a dozen or so HBCUs which got some love back in June. And so Virginia State's donation gift was $30 million. And for a lot of the schools, it was the largest single donation that they received.
Right.
So shout out to Ms. Mackenzie Scott and it'll be interesting to see how those funds change the game for a lot of schools in 2021. And you go hear our conversation with Dr. Abdullah. You know, he talks a little bit about what that will do for Virginia State. And I would imagine for even schools like Prairie View A&M, who got a $50 million donation, things will change for a lot of those schools. And, you know, that'll be good. Make sure to go to the website as well, mybcsn.net. You can go read our stories, our articles, our polls, our rankings, anything you want to find from your HBCU. It's there. So you can get a great little Twitter feed of every HBCU, Division I, Division II, NAIA. You can follow all of them and find out everything that's going on. Okay, Drew. So here we go through the list of some of the items and things that we did. Let me start by, I'm just kind of going, I'm going to go through some things here. How about the fact that if you think back to January of 2020, right? It was the end of the 2019 season. You remember that, right? The Signee. You remember all the. Do you think back to a year ago, some of the controversy that we kind of created a little bit with with our selection of the Black College National Champion, and just
wouldn't we
all
love
of
to
that.
just have football right now, period, and be going through that same controversy again?
Yeah. So I mean, the 20. We go into the 2020 year actually, and I think one of the things that I noticed as I went back and I did a little looking here was, you know, through some of the Instagram pages, we had a recognition for our team of the decade from the 2000s. Though actually, I guess the 2010 to 2019 era. That was, of course, North Carolina A&T State. But, you know, we had when COVID and everything hit and it kind of shut down sports on March 11th, there was, right in the middle of that was the MEAC tournament. That was actually one of the last games that was being played. I think that
Wasn't
game,
that the last game that finished or was stopped? I believe it was stopped in progress at halftime. Was it the last one to stop?
It was stopped at halftime, and it was a little confusing because when you started to catch the announcement maybe a day or two early that some tournaments were canceling, I think the Ivy Leagues are first to cancel, you notice that all of a sudden the MEAC was still going. And I actually had a thought, I'm thinking, hey, the MEAC is going to power through and they're going to finish. And then no, the MEAC actually pulled the plug in the middle of the game. One of the things that happened during that MEAC tournament was that Bethune-Cookman's women, who were number one in the tournament seeding, got knocked off in the first game of the playoffs of that tournament. They were the regular season champions and got knocked out in the first round. So obviously none of those games end up counting. So, you know, Bethune-Cookman, I think, was awarded or recognized as the MEAC champion. But that's just one of the things that happened. So speaking of basketball, Drew, since a lot of those teams did not have a tournament to finish their year, we decided to put together a fantasy basketball tournament for the men and the women's. What do you recall about, before I just recap who won those, what do you recall about that experience of putting that thing together?
Number one, it was the challenge of trying to come up with a 32-team bracket across 2 NCAA and at that point 2 NAIA divisions. So you've got 4 different divisions/levels of basketball: division NCAA Division 1 and 2, and the last year that NAIA was split into Division 1 and Division 2. And then going through and trying to rank a team, and I'll take Talladega women, who I believe were 23-7 or something like that, 14-0 in their conference, and ranking them compared to a Texas Southern's women's team or a Bethune women's team or a Benedict's women's team, who also had great gears on their particular level. So trying to eliminate the Division I bias.
Right.
Because the Division I's will never have a record on paper as good as your Division II's. and your NAIA just because of the level of competition that they play. But just because your Division I team has 8, 9, even 10 losses does not mean that they're a better team or that they're not as good of a team. And, you know, you always got that if these two teams play where they don't play. So you don't have that too often. So just trying to come up with a fair ranking system to come up with your number 1 seeds, number 2 seeds, all the way down to your number 8. And then when we had the idea to come up with the bracket names based upon coaching legends, that was kind of the, you know, historical benefit. Because I guarantee you there were some people out there who may have forgotten about some of those coaches legends that we named those brackets after. And then coming back to those brackets, when you actually had the school that one of those legends played in, okay, we really need to put this person in this in the bracket that their school is associated with, like the Big House Games bracket. You know, it only made sense to put the school he coached at in that, or the Ben Jobe. It only made sense to put Southern in the Ben Jobe, or Alabama A&M in the Ben Jobe.
Do you remember the names of the men's brackets? I know we had the Ben Jobe bracket.
Yeah, Big House
Games bracket. What else? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot, and I'm trying to cheat and see if I can find the original article.
See if you can pull it up real quick.
Yes, but
well, while you're doing that, let me just recap. So I'll give you a chance to look for it on the men and women's side. So for the men, so we basically took a field of 32 and had the voting, and we solicited the fan voting, the athletic websites, and we appreciate all of this was done in April. So we appreciate all of the interaction that came from this. And from the men's tournament, we ended up with 3 schools from the SWAC, Prairie View, Texas Southern, and Southern University. And then we had Xavier, Louisiana. I believe Xavier won their conference. Prairie View A&M won the regular season. Of course, there wasn't a conference tournament, so you don't know who was there. Southern, I think, was one of the hottest teams going into the SWAC tournament. So we had 3 SWAC teams and Xavier, and that was the Final 4 for the men. And it came down to a championship matchup after the voting between Prairie View versus Xavier. And again, you know, the matchups you had Xavier versus Southern. You had 2 schools from Louisiana, and you had 2 schools from Texas. So we had Texas versus Louisiana in the men's Final 4. You know, we had like 2 days of voting and all this other stuff, and it was some great interactions. But anyway, the champion for our HBCU fantasy men's tournament was Xavier. Coach Williams and the Xavier men, we had the pleasure of being able to cover their tournament, their GCAC tournament, and they actually won the GCAC tournament. Did you ever figure out those names, Drew?
Yes, and one last thing about us covering that GCAC tournament. To this day, Xavier men are the last HBCU team to win a conference tournament.
Yeah, because that was the last tournament.
The conference win a conference championship of any kind since COVID has hit us. On the men's side, we had 4 brackets. We had the Clarence Big House Games bracket, the Jerry Johnson bracket, the John McClendon bracket, and the Ben Jobe bracket. On the women's side, we had the C. Vivian Stringer bracket. A lot of people forget that Vivian Stringer had her beginnings in HBCU basketball, accumulate over 250 of her victories in HBCU basketball. Lonnie Bartlett. And these last 2 are actually currently still coaching their teams. Bo Browder, head women's basketball coach at Xavier University, who lost in the finals of our fantasy tournament to Prairie View A&M, and Robert Skinner, who is currently at Albany State University. And those two coaches are approaching the 500 victory mark also. Bo Browder has a great opportunity to get there this year. He needed 15 victories coming into this season to get to that magical number 500. He's picked up 3 thus far, so he has 12 to go this season. And Robert Skinner, unfortunately, looks like he will have to wait at least 1 year, if not two years, for him to get there, because Albany State has suspended their basketball program at this point, and I believe Coach Skinner is in the 460s, if I remember correctly.
Right, and you just mentioned there the women's champion happened to be Prairie View A&M. So even though Prairie View A&M's men didn't, they were in the finals. They were the Prairie View faithful came out and voted for the women, and so it was very cool. We, again, to be able to do that. Oh, the Final Four. I guess I should have mentioned the Final Four for the women. Well, we already mentioned that the championship game was Prairie View versus Southern, but we also had Benedict College, who I think Benedict might have had the best record of any HBCU. I think they were like 22-3. They were the back-to-back.
I thought it was like 27-3. It was about 27-3 after they finished the tournament.
27-3, right, 27-3. And then we also had Xavier. So we had Southern. So we basically had Prairie View men and women in the Final Four, Xavier men and women in the Final Four, Southern men and women in the Final Four. And so those 3 fan bases really did a great job throughout the tournament. There were some close matchups throughout, and it was all based on fan voting. It wasn't based off of anything other than fan matchups. So those athletic departments did a great job of promoting it, and that was in April. That was real early in the whole stoppage.
When people had nothing else to do, it seemed like, and there were. What interested me about it was the smaller schools really got into it. And when I say smaller schools, schools that have enrollments of 800, obviously don't have the larger alumni bases that some of your SWAC and MEAC schools may have, where you've got schools with 8,000-10,000 students in it. But those schools with less than 1,000 enrollment were really engaged in the process. And, we between the 2 tournaments, Brian, we had over 7,000 votes throughout the different rounds. Now, I'm not going to say 7,000 people voted, but there were over 7,000 votes cast between the men's and women's in the 5 rounds of each tournament.
Yeah. Another tournament that actually managed to play and complete was the CIAA tournament. It was actually a week before the GCAC tournament took place, started and finished, and they did finish. But what was significant about the CIAA tournament in 2020, it happened to be the last year that the CIAA would be in Charlotte, North Carolina, after a 15-year run. It would also be the last time that it would be in either the state of North Carolina or Virginia. What was the run, Drew? You did this in pre-show. What was the run of years? I know you did deep dive stuff, so don't go too deep here. Just tell me what was the consecutive years that the CIAA tournament had been in just the state of North Carolina?
The tournament has been in North Carolina the last 27 years in North Carolina. Prior to that, it was in the state of Virginia for 18 years. So 50 of the 75 CIAA tournaments, Brian, have been held in the state of North Carolina. So that's a long relationship that's coming to a temporary end. And the tournament is going back to, for lack of a better word, to the original area where it was first hosted at. First CIAA tournament was held in Washington, D.C. It did have a 1-year run in Baltimore Bryan, before it moved down south into the Carolinas.
Oh, so it had been in Baltimore previously?
One year in the 40s.
Wow, okay. And it just so happens that Baltimore is the place that it was scheduled to be in 2021. But of course, COVID happened. And then the news recently that the CIAA was canceling all basketball for men and women. So that debut of the CIAA tournament will have to wait a year and will most likely be in 2022.
Right. Yeah. And 2022. And I'm just curious, this is pure legal stuff right here, but I'm wondering if that year just comes off the contract or they add that year to the end of the contract. I'm just curious to see what happens, because I believe it was in Baltimore for I believe it was a 3-year run that was supposed to be in Baltimore. So just curious to see what happens with that.
Yeah, you got me. I don't know the number of years. Okay, moving forward, another event, basketball related, that happened over the spring, summer. We all remember, I think, well, no, one of the big, what I called one of the moments of the 2019-2020 school year, one of the top moments. And, you know, we did a top 5 of the school year. Thomas Snacks Lee getting into a contest, getting into a game for Jackson State. He's the manager for Jackson State. Gets into a game on senior night, had never played or dressed. He'd been a manager for like 4 years. He's from Jackson. You know, we had a conversation with him. He loves Jackson State, loves that program, loves basketball. He finally got a chance to dress, wore number 35 after his favorite guy, Kevin Durant. Gets in the ball game. I don't know, maybe there's about a minute and a half left.
About 2 minutes ago, something like that. Yeah.
And so there's this video that goes viral, and I'm talking nationally viral, of Thomas hitting a 3-pointer from Steph Curry range. Whatever you think Steph Curry range is, that's where he shot it. He shot it from about 30 feet, 35 feet.
Something ridiculous like that.
It was somewhere near the bench. It was near the bench. And it was nothing but net. But what made the video so great is the flat out joy and enthusiasm of everybody. I mean, everybody, obviously, except the team who they were playing. But I mean, bench.
I think they even got caught in the moment, though.
I mean, it was such a great, I mean, I get chills when I think about that video. So that, of course, led to eventually, you know, during the summer, ESPN has the ESPYs, and they have their great moments from the last calendar year, from I think July to June. And of course, fan voting dictated that video be one of the, I think they had a bracket style.
He was the number 8 seed in his bracket,
going up against Simone Biles, right? Yes. Olympic medalist, world champion, who the video of her doing some it was like a ridiculous double flip, somersault, side spin, drinking on some tea. I don't know what it was, but it was something that had like never been done before, Drew. And literally Snacks beat her in the first round. And then he goes on to win the ESPY for greatest, what was the title? Greatest moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wins the ESPY for greatest moment, and then goes on this media tour nationally. I mean, he was on the Today Show. He was everywhere in New York nationally for that moment. And, you know, that was the first, and in a year where Jackson State has a great year of publicity, that was the first big blip on the radar for Jackson State's athletic programs because of Thomas Snacks Lee. So, I mean, I think that was one of, you know, it set in motion a lot of great things for Jackson State in 2020.
I'll tell you what, it prepared the sports information department, the athletic department, and the local media in Jackson, Mississippi on how to deal with the national media because of one of our stories that made our top 5 as far as biggest stories of the year. And it's no secret that we're talking about Deion Sanders, because if Snacks doesn't happen, do you think everything would have went as smooth as it did with Deion coming in? They had an opportunity to learn good, bad, and ugly, and there was no ugly with the Snacks situation, but they had an opportunity to learn and revise. So when the media circus came with Deion, we just did this 3 months ago. Okay, let's do this again. You know, and ironically, we happen to have an interview with Snacks, and between the interview and us cutting the interview up and actually airing it, it was announced that he was nominated for the ESPY, because at that point in time he did not know, and of course we did not know. So we had to go back and post-edit the video before we put it out, because we were ready to put the video out that following day. Then we get the announcement that Snacks is up for the ESPYs. So we had to kind of redo the graphics and everything else so that we can help support him in his track to get the ESPYs. And you talk about somebody who has capitalized on their 15 minutes of fame. More power to you, my brother. More power to you.
Yeah, definitely. Snacks has had a great a great year. I saw a tweet that he sent out, and he said 2020 was my year. Played Division I basketball, won ESPYs on viral 3-point shot, appearance on the Today Show. He started an AAU organization called Snack Pack Elite. They actually went 16-6, and they won a championship in a tournament. He got a sponsorship from Buffalo Wild Wings, and he met President-elect Joe Biden.
Man, that's a lifetime.
That young man. I mean, that is a great 2020, and when all things considered. So, congratulations, Thomas Lee. Man, that was a great year, and many blessings to you in the future. You know, let's hope you keep adding to that run. But yeah, I mean, he did some stuff in that year that many people strive to do just half of, and never get a shot to do even one of those things. So, props to him. Moving forward into the spring, you know, obviously we did not have. We didn't know how COVID was going to affect HBCU players that had just finished the 2019 year. We started hearing rumblings that scouts weren't able to go and do pro camp visits. Some big events that were put in place for HBCU players end up being canceled. And, you know, I think we had a great conversation with Damon Talbot from draftdiamonds.com. And we talked, because he covers scouting, and especially at the FCS small school level. That's where he has really made his great name and a forte. Yes. And he told us, he said, you know, the scouts, the word is starting to rumble that the scouts aren't getting out. This is going to be a year where I remember him saying, when it comes down to an unknown guy at a small school versus some kid that plays at Clemson or some known Michigan State program.
I believe he said some guy who sits on the bench at Clemson.
Yeah, that they may go with the guy who is at the program with the known commodities, you know, and just because you haven't, you know, it's a little lazy, but what we saw at the NFL draft, Drew, almost came home to be prophetic, because I believe only 8 or 9 players from FCS or Division II schools got drafted in the 2020 NFL draft. That was the lowest number, I think, in the history of the draft. And then as it relates to HBCU players, one young man, and you know who he was. Who was he, Drew? Let the people know.
I believe that was Lachavious Simmons out of Tennessee State.
Yes, Lachavious Simmons.
And he was drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 7th round.
Right, one player. And some of the, I went back and looked at some of the top names that were eligible for the draft that did not get drafted. How about Black College Player of the Year Chris Rowland of Tennessee State, who broke
Jerry Rice's record.
Jerry Rice's record, right? He broke Jerry Rice's record. How about Jordan Bentley of Alabama A&M, who had a great year? I'm just kind of scrolling through names that I see. There was a quarterback that got a free agent contract, Jalen Morton from Prairie View A&M, but how about linebacker Solomon Muhammad of Alcorn State, Rico Kennedy, Morgan State, Nigel Chavis, I believe Christian Angula from Hampton, also called a free agent pick, draft pick, a free agent contract, excuse me, is what I'm trying to say. And he got an opportunity, but there were names. Marcus Pettiford, offensive lineman from North Carolina A&T. Remember, this is the HBCUs had a young man be drafted in the first round as an offensive lineman, right?
Correct.
And Pettiford was a 3-time MEAC Offensive Player of the Year.
Right. And let's take this one step further, Brian. And we didn't discuss this, but the fact that there was no NFL preseason to top this off. So those few who even got the opportunity or invited to camp did not get an opportunity to show off their skills because, you compete in practice, but the level of competition in practice versus what you get when you put on the pads and hit somebody in a different color jersey that you don't know is totally different. Not only did they not have preseason games due to COVID, they weren't even allowed to scrimmage other teams. So those looks that a player gets to catch the eye of their position coach did not occur this year.
Yeah. It was a major disappointment for those guys. And you don't, hopefully, the thing is now those guys have to commit and be a part of the mix for next year, for the 2021 draft, along with, you won't have any seniors from out of the HBCU level, but you're just hoping that it opens the door for more opportunities.
And I just saw a report today that they are doing away with OTAs for the upcoming summer.
Wow.
So fewer opportunities to impress the position coaches.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what the future holds. I mean, no CFL draft. Obviously, you had the XFL ended up folding in the spring.
Hopefully that will come back.
Yeah, that's now been bought, reorganized under new management. Dwayne Rock Johnson and his former wife, ex-wife rather, her name escapes me, but they are now running the XFL. She's running the XFL. I think he's a part of it, but it's primarily her as the main person running it. So hopefully more leagues and opportunities will help HBCU players in the future, but it brings up a challenging decision in 2021 for the guys who missed this year. I mean, guys like Akil Glass, Jermaine Martin, guys who would have gone into this upcoming year as their senior season, missed opportunities. And so we'll have to wait and see what happens for them in 2021. How about this story, Drew? This actually 2020 was supposed to be, it is, I'm not saying supposed to be, it is the 50th year that the MEAC, Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, has been in existence, formed in the fall of 1970. And so this season was part of their 50th year celebration. The SWAC had made some great plans because this was the 100th year of the Southwest Athletic Conference. Those plans, they were supposed to have a great gala in the summer. I remember the spring, the media day from 2019, I think it was, and all those announcements came out. And unfortunately, those celebrations, I mean, they've kind of done some things virtually, but the grandiose nature of those celebrations were halted this year, as well as the Negro League. The Negro League started in 1920, was 100th year anniversary. Baseball didn't start in April. Actually didn't start into
July.
What? July? June?
Yes.
July?
July. It was July. It was after the 4th. Like a week or two after the 4th.
Yeah, you know, you didn't have Jackie Robinson Day, which would have kind of tied into the whole celebration of the Negro Leagues, right? So that was a very, I mean, that was tough. That was one of those stories. Those are one of those celebrations that we missed. I mean, I know we're still trying to do it. The MEAC is still trying to do things, the SWAC are, but when you don't really have the sports to kind of celebrate, when you can't bring people together, let me just say that you can't bring these great alums together, obviously because of COVID, it just kind of affects the celebration, right?
Correct. But I'm going to put a little positive spin on this.
Go ahead.
Something and the MEAC and the SWAC and Negro League Baseball have had to do this along with everybody else. Number one, we all learned how to use Zoom this year.
Yeah, we did. We did. I wish I would have invested in Zoom, man. I tell you.
And it's funny, we played around with Zoom ourselves trying to do things, and we were ahead of the curve with everybody else, but we had to learn things in Zoom just like everybody else did. So everybody has learned how to do Zoom. Social distance is now in the dictionary. That word, social and distance were not words that you
put words, two separate
together, words. You know, in a sentence. So, and I think I've said this before. Why does it take a pandemic for us to learn how to do something that we should all have sense enough to do in the first place? A, when you cough, don't cough in your hand, cough on your sleeve. I mean, we should know that. Wash your hands often. And I don't care whether pandemic or no pandemic, because people are nasty and things that you touch are nasty. Just GP.
Hand sanitizers. I wish I would have invested in hand sanitizers this past year.
Bryan. No, here's the thing. We always said it's the most important piece of paper that you could ever own. And we found out this summer or this spring how important that piece of paper was. Toilet paper.
Yes, sir.
It was always a joke, the most important piece of paper in the house. Until you couldn't find none to put in your house.
There are people probably, Drew, that still have closets full of toilet paper from what they did in terms of stockpiling back in April.
I know people who still have the industrial strength restaurant big roll, you know, the big 18-inch rolls and 12-inch rolls that you find in the
half-ply
at the gas station and the restaurants that scratch your butt when you use it.
That's that half-ply roll. That ain't gonna do nothing but you gotta use like 10 rolls just to equal a 1-ply roll, man. That stuff will hurt.
Oh my God! Please don't have diarrhea with that. That's all I'm gonna say.
Just jump in the shower. Just jump in the shower.
You know, so just some of the things that we've learned this year because of this pandemic. You know, we learned to respect people's personal space via social distancing.
Yes, we have. Online ordering has also been something we learned how to do too. Online ordering.
And your grandma or your mother who refused to catch up with technology was forced to catch up with technology this year.
Yes, she was.
Yes, because you had no choice but to do it, but to survive. My mother finally figured out. My mother has had an iPhone for at least 5 years, and she finally figured out how to FaceTime.
Amen. Amen. That's a beautiful thing. Yes, we had to do the family cousins and uncles and aunts. We did a big old Zoom conference call, and so yeah, it's been a challenge. And congratulations to the older generation for catching up with the rest of us.
Yes,
those of you who survived this pandemic. Yes.
Yes.
All
right,
okay.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. A couple of more stories that were the honorable mention type. The NBA went into a bubble, and they had to finish their season. Actually, all of this, our sports world stopped as a result of an NBA game. Remember that game? Yes, it was Oklahoma City,
Utah,
and Utah Jazz game. Rudy Gobert of the Jazz had been reported as having COVID, and all of a sudden it freaked everybody out because they were like, oh no, he could spread it to everybody, which he actually did to a couple of his teammates.
And this came about 2 to 3 days after it was announced that certain teams were no longer going to allow fans in their arenas for the remainder of the year, because they thought by not letting fans in, they would be able to shield the players to continue on with the season. That lasted for 2 days.
Yes, and then that's when I think that's when it became real, because when a professional organization with the clout of NBA,
yes,
pulls the plug on things, and right before a game started, they canceled it. And then all of a sudden, NBA college tournaments were like, whoa, let's cancel our stuff too. And it just spread. All sports stopped. And the world stopped. It was like schools, all of a sudden, schools were like, whoa, wait a minute, the NBA did what? Oh, yeah, we're going to distance learning now. Because if
how many, once again, talk about stock, if you would have iPads, even the knockoff tablets started selling because people needed devices in order to distance learn. Hotspots became even more important. You needed unlimited data on your phone or whatever you had, whatever device that you had, so that you could continue to learn. Another benefit out of this, our HBCUs, which we love, finally had to get with the program when it came to registration, financial aid, and some of the other services that
online classes. They had to start having online classes. Many of them did not, and they had to transition into creating an online
platform
platform. Exactly.
Yes.
And they had to catch up with a lot of schools who were already doing it in the HWCUs. Yeah.
And not only that, but they had the professors had to catch up to where the students already were, because the students had the knowledge and wherewithal from a lot of the high schools have already started using iPads and tablets because of Google grants and Apple grants. And then they were going to these universities that were, for lack of a better word, 5 years behind the high school that they just came from. So it forced the universities to catch up.
Yeah, I just hope, and sidebar obviously here, it definitely affected underprivileged, underfunded schools, not only just HBCUs, but even high schools, elementary schools, because all of a sudden that was something that they didn't have the funding for. And so all of a sudden that funding, you had to find it, and you had to create those programs, because that's the last thing you wanted. We don't want to have that
a generation of dummies,
generation gap because of COVID and what it caused education to go into. So, but anyway, we sidebar, and so we start where I started with all of that, talking about the NBA, because I think one of the big stories of the year was, I call it Chris Paul's HBCU love in the bubble.
The sneaker tour.
His HBCU love in the bubble, aka the sneaker tour. Chris Paul, obviously he's from Winston-Salem, went to Wake Forest, but I think he said in several interviews, a lot of his family are either HBCU grads, went to
including
Winston
his
State.
parents, I believe.
Yeah. So he has a lot of love, and has even since the NBA season has really shown an affection and affinity for supporting HBCUs in as many ways as possible. So he had this sneaker tour in which every game, and I think there were 8 regular season games, and then OKC made it into the playoffs. So there would be a few extra games. Did they get into the second round of the playoffs? They got into the second round of the playoffs, right? So the list of schools.
And I believe both of those were 7-game series.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so you had about, let's see, 14 games plus 8 regular. So there was 22 games. Now, I don't know if this is 22 schools. I didn't do the math here. But this, I'm just reading from the press release for, I guess, his, they're donating, or I guess putting up a lot of the shoes that he wore up for bid. Proceeds donated to each of the men and women's basketball programs from these schools. But a part of the sneaker tour, the schools featured, you had Howard University, Alabama A&M University, Albany State, Langston, Hampton, Alabama State, Lincoln, Missouri University, Shaw University, Southern, Savannah State, Clark Atlanta, Livingstone. Those are the ones mentioned in the press release. I know he also had a pair of Winston-Salem shoes. Is there any pair that any school I named that you can recall him wearing that maybe I didn't mention?
Did you say Savannah? Because I remember the Savannah.
I did say okay. Savannah. Yep.
Well, you just named off 13 right there.
I did. Okay. So I don't think he wore doubles. So, no. I know there's some other schools there that he may have worn. I know he didn't have FAMU shoes on, although I know he had some FAMU gear. And that was another thing Chris Paul did. Going to the game, obviously we love to see what players wear. That's a big thing now. What are players wearing going to the game? He made sure to rep an HBCU every game.
Yes.
When he
walked,
a different one every day going to the game. So I mean, Chris Paul did a great advocate in terms of the marketing and promotion of those schools, because obviously that's a big market for NBA. The NBA shoe market is a big thing. And so, obviously that just continues to be a great exposure thing that Chris Paul did. So props to Chris Paul on that. I thought that was a big event for the year. One last honorable mention story, and it's related to basketball, kind of following up from the Chris Paul story. We had our first 5-star recruit actually sign with an HBCU, I believe, in any sport. We have not had a football, but basketball had its first, and his name is Makur Maker. He has a cousin, Thon Maker, who was in the NBA. I remember following him. I think he got drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks. But Makur ends up signing with Howard University. And that was a pretty big deal. 7 foot, has a great outside game, kind of in that, I don't know if he's more in that Kevin Durant mode or mold, but he can handle the ball. He can definitely shoot it from outside. He's got a nice game. A potential pro prospect. I think he was ESPN rated top 15. He was a 5-star recruit. I think he was somewhere in the 10 to 15 range on their list.
Touted as potential lottery pick.
Yes, he's going to be in the mix for a lottery going into the 2021 NBA draft. But his signing really comes on the heels of another young man, Mikey Williams, who I think is going to be, he's actually a junior right now.
Yes, he's in the 22 class.
Yeah, 2022 class. He actually was, I don't know which one of those two guys was one of the first guys to say they wanted to go to an HBCU and sort of,
I really think it was Williams, was Williams. Slightly ahead of Maker.
Right. So either one of them You know, Makur, I mean, I think it was Williams who may have been the first guy to sort of tweet that out, but Makur was the first one to actually do the signing, I guess, and actually sign. But there's been other guys. I mean, we mentioned Trace Young, who was a highly sought after transfer. He ended up going to Alabama State.
Yeah, after coming from Wyoming.
And there have been some other 4-star transfers, I think, that have gone to Norfolk State, Morgan State. I know those 2 schools in specific. I can't think of any of the other schools where they transferred to.
But it's also trickled down into football.
Yes.
We haven't gotten a 5-star yet, but we've gotten a lot of 3- and 4-star athletes who have either signed directly out of high school with our HBCUs or have transferred from a P5 back to an HBCU.
Right. Now, Howard was one of the schools that actually did start their season, and they played when every Division I team was allowed to around Thanksgiving. And I think Makur may have played in 2 or 3 games before he was shelved with what was listed as a groin injury. I just hope, and I'm going to pray that
it's not over.
it is not a 3-game career a la Kyrie Irving going to Duke. I'm serious because
I'm going to say this. If it turns into him becoming the number 1 overall pick, I won't be mad at him, just like it did for Kyrie.
Look, hey, great. I mean, the number 1 pick from Howard University, Makur Maker, he played 3 games.
Kyrie plays. Kyrie probably couldn't even tell you what a library is at Duke. So what's the difference?
But you don't think of him as a Dookie. You don't think of him as a Duke player because he was there for he wasn't even there for a full meal. He had a cup of tea. So what I'm saying is,
in the media guy, Kyrie Irving, Duke.
All right. Anyway, well, I'm just hoping that when the MEAC season starts for Howard, I'm hopeful that Makur is able to play some games for Coach Kenneth Blakeney and for Howard, because I want to see him play. I think, when Notre Dame University decides to travel to play Howard on MLK Day, I hope Makur Maker is part of that. I really do. I think the movement, the culture, we need to see it. Otherwise, it just becomes one of those talking points that mainstream media guys who, they're just going to rail on.
The I told you so's will come out.
Yeah, the I told you so, failed experiment, blah, blah, blah. So let's be hopeful that Makur Maker, while him being the first 5-star recruit is a great story, let's hope him being a part of getting Howard into maybe, who knows, the NCAA tournament by some way of Howard winning the MEAC, or let's just hope he plays. Let's just hope that happens in 2021. Can we agree on that, AD?
Yes, because he was first team preseason all MEAC. And one other thing, Brian, you talked about some of the naysayers. Some of those naysayers, unfortunately, will not be from mainstream media. They will be from our own HBCU media also.
Well, look, I have no problem with folks who have who think and choose to have a different thought than the mainstream of HBCU culture. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want us all to agree on the same thing. I don't think that makes for great discussion, and we can be critical and still support. Can we not?
Yeah. The only thing I'm gonna say about that, because this could turn to a whole nother discussion. Too often I see we hate on our hearts and not offer that opinion based on fact, but we offer that opinion based on our heart and play it off as if it is fact. Instead of saying, this is my opinion, this is how I feel about this, which I have no problem with and I respect that. But don't put it out as if it is fact.
I think more people need to be reading things with a critical eye towards it being an opinion in the first place.
Yes.
I think too many times things and we think that's a fact, when we should automatically read it as an opinion. Everything we read, even things we do,
editorial or commentary or whatever it is.
Anything we do, it has a slant towards our personal opinion. I mean, our opinions we get our opinions based on facts. Sometimes they may be small, other times they can be grandiose, but I mean, that's where you get your opinions from. So yeah, but that was well said. All right. When we come back from the break, we finally get into revealing the top 5 stories of 2020. Thank you for sticking in there with us. You've been watching and listening to BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll be back right after these words.
My God. It's another sad day in America.
Painful to be introduced to George Floyd during his last breath
with a cop's knee on his neck.
He deserves so much more.
How many black lives have to be taken before something is done?
We are not a threat.
I am shaking as I type.
This has got to stop.
We are sick of it.
We need conviction.
I just want us all to live.
Death will not stop until the powers that be are finally held accountable.
Don't look away from the truth until every one of us are free from white supremacy.
The world stands with you.
Criminalizing and killing of black and brown bodies is not new. It's as old as America. It's just getting filmed more.
Do you know what it feels like to be hunted? To have a new hashtag for a dead black person every single day? How does one plan a life if they aren't sure they will have a life to plan?
Trayvon,
Armstrong, Deborah Dance,
Megan Flanagan,
Maya Hall,
Michelle Lee
Megan
George Floyd. His name was George Floyd. Say his name.
Say his name.
George Floyd. Say his name.
Say their names. Once again, and always, we fight for justice. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Rest in power, beautiful. You didn't deserve.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
At Hampton Law, our primary goal is to provide non-traditional yet effective solutions and redefine the approach to client legal concerns. As your trusted legal advisor, we believe in sophisticated, personalized services that eliminate the confusion and complexity sometimes associated with legal matters. Our high standard for client care and concern, coupled with our extensive legal knowledge and skills, make Hampton Law a resource focused on the protection of the client's interest and overall goals. We value our clients and truly enjoy working with them. Visit thamptonlaw.com to conveniently schedule an appointment online. Tamika Hampton Esquire, 1631 Rock Springs Road, Suite 336, Apopka, Florida, 407-494-1471. thamptonlaw.com.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and A.D. here, and we are recapping the top stories of the 2020 calendar year. And we have gotten to the point where we're going to go through our top 5 stories, all the extra fluff of the last segment. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And now we get into the meat of this podcast, although at this point now it becomes the dessert. as much as we go in this. Reminding you again, make sure you're subscribed to the BCSN Sports Wrap wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to just search for BCSN Sports Wrap, and you can get the audio version of this show. You can go to mybcsn.net and watch the video version of this. Obviously, we're on YouTube via the Jericho Broadcast Network's YouTube feed. That's MyJBN Online. And of course, if you have that app, the Jericho Broadcast Network's app, you can get our show and be alerted to every time we drop a new show. Just search MyJBN or MyBCSN, and that's when you get updates to our show, as well as Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. That's, when those shows drop, you can be notified of those. Okay, we're going to count down 5-1. Our number 5 story from 2020 was Florida Memorial University bringing football back and attempting to have a historic return to football. I think it was the first time in 62 years that they were scheduled to play football. And amidst everything seemed to start off on the right steps. Obviously, the first game or two, they were not pretty. They were pretty bad. But Florida Memorial was the only HBCU to dress, play fall practices, and take the field for the first game of the season in September. Okay. That only lasted for about 3 weeks. And then unfortunately, along with some other things going on within the athletic program, fall sports, COVID-19, just kind of swept through and took out the season, took out another sport, took out an athletic director, and
took out three other sports, Brian.
Thank you. 3 other. Oh, that's right. Yeah, there were 3 of them.
Men's and women's soccer.
Yeah, so it basically wiped out the entire fall sports at Florida Memorial. I remember we did a volleyball game on campus, and I had a chance to meet the president, the AD at the time, former AD, talk to the football coach, and there was so much enthusiasm.
And we were prepared to do when they pulled the plug, we were scheduled to do a football game 2 days later,
which would have been their first home football game, right?
Correct.
Their first home football game. And for Florida Memorial, they only managed to get 3 games into the schedule. Now their football team was a part of the Sun Division in the Mid-South Conference. Now the other 6 schools in that conference, it just so happens that they were all trying to play at least an 8-game schedule. And most of those schools played anywhere from 8 games to 6 games overall. Florida Memorial, of course, after just 3 games, canceled. So, there was no NAIA tournament for any of those teams. It was really, I don't even know if those teams will play in the spring.
But yeah, because NAIA will be having their championships, I believe, in April, and it still will be in Grambling, Louisiana.
But I mean, those Sun Division teams. I'm just referring to those Sun Division teams.
They can play in the spring, according to NAIA rules. Whether they are invited or whether they choose to play in the spring is something different, because basically they would use their spring practice to get ready and then lace it up in April.
Yeah. So do we know? So I guess quickly, Drew, your thoughts on just the Florida Memorial story, whether you want to stick to the football side or just in general, because obviously you did some good writing and reporting or surrounding some of the stuff going on down there. Just your thoughts quickly.
Well, number one, and love my HBCUs, I like Florida Memorial. But when I look back at this in retrospect, I hate to say this thing was doomed from the start, but because Florida Memorial does not have an on-campus football facility as of yet. They use the public facilities within Miami Gardens Florida. When I say the public facilities, various parks and high schools that are there in Miami Gardens, close to the campus. Without them having an on-campus facility, it was tough for them just to practice, let alone find a facility that met up to NAIA standards to host home football games. And
they were practicing on the baseball field, correct?
Correct. And you can attest to this. We looked at, and when I say we at the Black College Sports Network, we actually had been given 3 different facilities that we were scheduled to broadcast in, but before we never broadcasted the game, if that makes sense to anybody. Because the original facility that they were going to use, they could not use due to local ordinances. Then facility number 2, they also could not use, and they had finally gotten in with a 3rd facility, but of course they never had the opportunity to play in that facility. So that's a major obstacle, not only for an HBCU, for any school to overcome. It's not having a facility to practice in. Then, you had all of the build up towards this year, and baby, they were kind of like, we didn't put this much into it. We've got to do this. We can't push this off any further. Maybe in retrospect, maybe they should have it all. But them going out and attempting to do this opened up a lot of eyes throughout, not only on their campus, but throughout HBCUs, period, and made everybody realize, especially for a smaller program, when I say small compared to our P5s, how tough it was going to be in order to pull this off. But they've come back, they've been able to play basketball. They learned some of those lessons from the fall, which has allowed them to play basketball thus far. Other HBCUs were able to evaluate what happened at Florida Memorial University and make adjustments to their individual plan, including deciding not to play at all. And the success or the failures at Florida Memorial University, I hate to say they were the guinea pigs, but they may have been considered the proverbial guinea pigs, allowed some other HBCUs to evaluate some of those situations down there in Miami Gardens. Not to mention Miami Gardens in an urban area, a hotspot, compared to some of our rural HBCUs. So it gave some good data to some other schools, for lack of better words. Also, I don't want to say exposed is the right word. It brought to light some other issues that may have been occurring at the university, so that some changes were made in leadership at the university. I don't think those changes were directly due to COVID-19, but everything surrounding COVID-19 and some of the decisions and everything else going on, some decisions, the board at the university felt certain decisions had to be made as far as personnel goes.
Well, for me, I think the biggest things that came out of it for me was communication. I think you have to, everybody has to be on the same page. And when your leadership, I think one of the things we kept hearing, or what came out of it, we talked about, you started to see the importance of, you have to be able to communicate to the young people these days, because when you don't when you don't effectively communicate them, they sit in control of and know how to work a great marketing tool, a great tool of promotion, which is social media.
Yeah.
And when you don't communicate things in the right way or enough, even though you think you may be communicating enough, you probably have to overdo it. Because if you're communicating at the top, and then your next tier, which is the coaching, if the coaches aren't communicating to the players, which that used to be the old school way of doing it, right? The top down.
AD tells the head coach tells the assistant coach tells the players.
Right.
Yeah.
So when the players, though, who now this modern generation of young athletes at the college level specifically feel a little more empowered, and they want to know more. They don't just want to be told by the assistant coach or the head coach. They want to know why.
Not only that, Brian, but because of modern technology, they actually have the ability to fact check you. So you cannot come at these 19, 20, 21-year-olds with some BS because they will fact check you.
And they put their opinions out there. So when they put their opinions out there, regardless of right or wrong, when they put it out there, all of a sudden media picks up on it and media runs. And when media outlets pick up on it, now you're dealing with the PR side of having to answer questions. And I think they just got caught up in a communications whirlwind that they never got control of. Right. And so I think that was the big thing that I think is a great lesson that I think a lot of schools have to do better of, and could have, because you started hearing about things afterwards that you're like, wait a minute, that didn't happen. You didn't know about this, that, and the other. And it just was messy at the end. And so I think another thing that came out of this, I think there is a difference between the way young female athletes and male athletes deal with playing right now through COVID. And I'll say, we know that the women's volleyball team, we found out, was very much against playing. I don't know if it was so much as the men's football team so much, but let's just say even right now, while basketball is happening, right, we've seen women's basketball programs opt out. They've opted out from like 2 days before the start of their season to 4 games into their season.
Not a men's team has done it yet.
Exactly. That was my point. And I'm talking on the player level, not a coaching or administrative level, a player level.
But I think it's our makeup, because men, from the moment you could walk, be tough, play through it, fight through it, stop all that crying. We don't go to the doctor because we too tough to go to the doctor.
Sure, right.
So whereas a woman, because they tend to take care of their bodies better than we do. Let's just be real about it. They're quicker to go to the doctor. Woman knows that at some point in time, most of them want to have children, so they have to protect their body. Yeah. So they make decisions in a different limelight with it up than us as males go. So and one other thing, as we move off of this subject, the one thing that I think the lesson that the other HBCUs learned from Florida Memorial was one voice. Have you noticed, since all that stuff started happening at Florida Memorial, there's been one, maybe 2 people speaking at a university when it comes to this COVID-19 matter, be it the president, be it the athletic director. You really don't hear too much from coaches right now when it comes to this COVID-19 stuff. It's the president, it's the university president or chancellor, maybe the athletic director. But if you're hearing from the athletic director and the president at the university, they are on the same page. They are putting out the same message. So I think that is the one lesson that has been learned by everybody from this. Whereas you talk about the Florida Memorial, there were multiple voices that were coming out when everything started falling apart with this COVID-19 situation. So I think that has been the one benefit for everybody out of this.
Right. So we will have to wait to see in 2021. We are hopeful that the 2021 season for Florida Memorial football kicks off with their contest against Edward Waters down, I believe that's supposed to be Labor Day weekend.
The same weekend that Florida A&M plays Jackson State. So that's going to be a big weekend in the Miami Gardens area.
Exactly. Well said. So that was our number 5 story. Florida Memorial trying to return to football. Number 4 story for us, the Black Lives Matter movement and its effect on HBCUs. I think any number of things might fall under this Black Lives Matter movement. And of course, whenever something like this happens, college campuses are usually, and college students are usually your strongest voices. I mean, we've seen other college campuses, we've seen other athletic programs be very vocal at schools. We've seen players at Florida A&M march to the Capitol, Florida A&M football. We've seen other HBCU programs be active in trying to get people to vote. Howard University, for example, I recall Coach Blakeney talking about that push and organization that they were a part of to help spur on people to vote. I mean, it just so happened that the Black Lives Matter movement came about at a time when we were going into an election year. So, that in fact may have swung several, and not only the presidential race, but probably definitely some Senate and congressional seats, maybe even in some local communities. And I'm sure Black college students, Black college athletes were a part of it, but as its effect on HBCU athletics, we saw more people wanting to be a part of the HBCU world. I kind of framed it towards the end of the year as wanting to do things with HBCUs and for HBCUs. I think it became very popular to want to associate with HBCUs. And then at the end of the year here with the donation by Mackenzie Scott, I think it set up for the next year. It changed the game, in my opinion, of what you do for HBCUs will be completely different than what you used to do when it was with HBCUs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What kind of things would you grab? What kind of things would you put under this big umbrella of the Black Lives Matter movement and its effect on HBCUs?
I think it was Dr. Abdullah who said it during our interview with him. And I didn't think about it deeply to say it, but I believe HBCUs could be considered the original Black Lives Matter movement over 150 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was the original organization of Black minds was with the creation of the historically Black colleges and universities.
But a lot of these schools formed by Black people.
Yes. That, like I say, the original Black Lives Matter movement, as they called the normal school for Negroes back during those days. Why they called them normal schools, I still haven't figured that out. Or were we not normal? But I digress from that. Every big movement in this nation has started on college campuses. And then when we think about the movements that have started from our HBCU campuses specifically, you go back to the sit-ins at the Woolworth counters in North Carolina, students from HBCUs. We think about all of the civil rights movements, the bus boycotts, the speaking out against the Vietnam War. A lot of our movements have started on HBCU campuses, and so this effect has been major to now where you're seeing first, and these things were not directly on HBCU campuses, but they affected. You saw the Black Lives Matter movement shut down the NBA in the playoffs.
You're referring to the movement itself, or just
the movement when there was another senseless act by the police in the middle of the playoffs when Milwaukee decided they were not playing that day, and the whole NBA followed Milwaukee's lead and decided not to play.
Right.
Ironically, Wisconsin swung back blue.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things are intertwined. We all know how it has been the hot HBCU due to Kamala Harris and a few other people at Howard this particular year. HBCUs, Black Lives Matter, Kamala Harris, Howard. I wonder if maybe some of the voting numbers increase because a lot of our HBCU students were at home and actually got to vote in their home district this particular year because they were in home instead of at whatever university in another city or in another county. I wonder if those had something to do with our voting numbers.
Well, and you know, think about the number of we mentioned the Makur Maker story and the Mikey Williams tweet. I think the timeline of those fall in conjunction, if I'm not mistaken, with maybe I don't know. I don't know the timeline. I guess I should have looked at the date on Mikey Williams's tweet, but I know there have been other athletes. There have been 4-star athletes in other sports, whether it be softball, volleyball, girls basketball, student athletes who had offers to go to other HWCUs that chose an HBCU for their next year, you know, and I think much like the era that we're part of the 90s era, the era that I think the Bill Cosby influence and promotion.
Bill Cosby, different world.
Right. That era of what it did to promote HBCUs and increase awareness was significant in driving numbers of a lot of schools. Then it dropped a little bit, I think. But I think we're about to hit a surge for a lot of the schools as a result of, you know, people waking up and realizing that, you know, you want to be somewhere. What we've been trying to tell people all the time is you want to be somewhere where they actually care about you and don't think of you as just a number.
Yeah.
You know, somebody on that campus cares about you. And there is something encouraging and motivating and seeing, you know, it's not going to be perfect. No college campus is. But there is something encouraging by seeing like-minded people that look like you that are interested mostly in education and being better and making their communities back home better.
Yeah.
You know, and so when this Black Lives Matter movement, it hopefully it will have financial benefits. It will have athletic benefits in terms of the type of athletes that start coming. It will even now have promotional we've seen various people, former athletes, major celebrities who want to be a part of giving to HBCUs because not just because they understand that the need, but they now have a desire to want to, even if they didn't go to an HBCU, they recognize its importance at this point of where we're at in the world. You know, so anything missed in there before we move on to number 3?
No, only thing I was going to add, Brian, do you think just like Tyler Perry came back with House of Pain after about 6-8 year layoff, you think we may get another reworking of A Different World or a similar college type show on a major network now? Black focus.
Well, when you say that, you miss the fact that we had that. There was the show. There was the
College Hill.
No, it was most recently. It was like a year or two ago. It was produced by, I believe. Oh my God! It came on.
I know it was on BET. It was on BET.
Rose was
Georgia A&T or something like that.
Something like that. I can't remember the name of the show, but. Yes. That was a little more salacious, probably is a little more real. I don't know. I never watched an episode of it, but I just remember the promotion of it online. So now when you say major network, if you're talking about the big 4,
Yes.
I don't think you'll see it on the Big Four. But television has moved past it having to be on the Big Four. I mean, this is the world. This is the era of Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu. You don't have to be on the Big Four to have an influence these days.
Correct.
So I don't know. I'll tell you what I'd love to see in these shows. Do Bill Cosby used to do when he used to wear the different sweatshirts.
Yes.
That promote a school, like what Chris Paul did going into the bubble. That's what I'd love to see more players doing, more celebrities doing in their shows, at the red carpets, at the out in public. I want to see more promoting of HBCUs through their gear, because that stands out. That to me stands out.
Yeah. I'm saying, and as we move off this subject, I do know the guy who actually made the Tuskegee shirt, the Tuskegee sweater for Bill Cosby.
That's a random little known fact.
Well, you brought up Bill Cosby wearing the sweatshirts. I do know the guy who actually made that shirt.
Okay, there's a story there which someday you may have to tell.
Yes.
All right, let's move forward to our number 3 story of the 2020 year, and that would be the announcement that Deion Sanders, prime time, on September 21st, 2020, announced that he would be the head coach, the 21st head coach
on
of
the 21st of September
University on September 21st on that we call it Earth, Wind, and Fire Day.
Yes.
So Deion decided, Coach Prime, as he would become known, decided to join I Love Jackson State University. And that's a big story in several respects. Look, he's a Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, a great promoter, a great orator. I've been paying attention. I'm a big fan of Deion Sanders. Been a fan since prime time was in Atlanta as a Brave and a Falcon. So following his career, and especially his post-playing career, has been interesting because I've watched him grow, where he started coaching youth football, his Truth organization, watching what he's done in high schools, and mainstream media loves to dig down and get after Deion when things aren't going right. Okay, because they don't like the confidence, what they've always looked at, braggadocio, his arrogance. They may look at. I just look at
they consider him cocky.
I just look at it as, look, when you're good, you're good. He was always he was the best cornerback in the league, hands down. Weren't going to stop him. You weren't going to throw. I mean, he shut a field down. He shut half a field down, Drew. So let's keep it real. He was the best. And when you're the best, sometimes, look, he was flashy. He did his thing, must be the money, all that stuff, that's fun. But what I've seen from him as a coach, I've seen a guy who's interested in being a leader. And I think now the past 4 months of Deion at Jackson State has been great publicity for Jackson State University. It still remains to be seen how great it will be for the SWAC, but it just comes at a time when the SWAC is expanding. So it is a perfect time for Deion, the brand, to join with new brands that are coming into the SWAC. And the SWAC, which is a big brand in itself, it's like this perfect synergy of things happening that I think 2021 is going to be a real exciting year. I'm not making any predictions about the future, whether he wins any SWAC championships, how long he's going to. I just say for however long he's there, I think he will change some things. Some positive things will happen. I think more positive than negative. And look, he has an interest in being a head coach. He has an interest in coaching football, working with football, young men. It's a good move. What's your thoughts on this story, number 3?
And this just hit me. It's almost perfect timing that Jackson State signs Deion as the SWAC goes into renegotiating a contract with ESPN, as they're bringing FAMU and Bethune in, which is going to bring that Florida market into the SWAC, which you already have that Texas market. You already have Houston, the number 3 market in the United States. In the SWAC, even though you've got two schools in the Metro Houston market, you know, you've got the New Orleans market, you've got Jackson, the Jackson market. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of numbers that the SWAC gets out this ESPN contract, because with all these different dynamics coming into play at the same time. That's number one. Number two, it has forced everyone else in the SWAC to step their game up. Now, you already had teams that already had their game, they already were at a high level. Florida A&M was already recruiting at a high level. Bethune comes in with one of the top programs in the MEAC transferring over to the SWAC. Grambling State has not been shabby. Coach Fobbs over there at Grambling State. Southern has had great recruiting classes. So you those schools who are already doing good, yeah, it's gonna force you to tighten up and adjust a few things, but they don't have to adjust as much as some of the other schools, such as your Prairie View, such as your Texas Southerns and your Mississippi Valleys and some of those other schools. It's gonna force them to upgrade their things just so they can keep up with the Jones.
Are you talking about from a
football
off the field football. Or yeah, but are you talking off the field recruiting type football things, or are you talking football related things?
I'm talking about directly football players, facilities, everything surrounding your football program. It's forcing some of these other schools to upgrade and to reevaluate their thinking, because it's no secret. With Deion comes money and comes publicity. Jackson,
well, it still remains to be seen what kind of money will come with bringing in Deion.
Well, let's look at this. Let's look at it. And this is we're going in 2022. Let's see what Jackson State's enrollment is. Just student enrollment. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. Those things come with Deion. More students, whether they play sports or not, are going to want to be a part of the I Love because of Deion Sanders.
I'm gonna jump in on you may have another point here, but Jackson State is already the top attended school in FCS and the SWAC. Now they have the fortune of having a 60,000 seat stadium that they play in, and they may only fill 33,000, but still that's more than other people, except when they go out on the road for classics. The question is, will the excitement surrounding Deion, will it start to bring 55,000 attended games to that Jackson Memorial Stadium? Because that's, and obviously, look, there are games when they play Grambling, there'll be 55,000 people there, without a doubt, but there'll be some games where there's only 30. I don't know who it'll be, but let's just say they're playing, I hate to do this to
UAPB.
them, but who?
Say maybe like a UAPB or something.
Okay, UAPB. That's the game where you got to have 55,000. Now, that's telling me that, okay, you're getting that region. When Mississippi Valley State comes, even though they're down, it's still Mississippi. Are you going to get 55,000? Because when FAMU comes, that's going to be, it should be. You should get 50. So the sponsorship dollars, things like that have to come in, and then you start to challenge. Now that's the point when I think other schools will have to sort of keep an ear up. But right now, how the marketing and promotion, look, Deion's name is what it is, and he's a part of some mainstream media platforms that help Jackson State, because he wears that Jackson State brand when he's on those shows.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's, you can't.
Once again, let's see what enrollment at Jackson State is in 2 to 3 years. Student enrollment. And to say he's not all in, he's all in. Not only is he coaching, recruiting other players, but he's brought his own children there. If that's not true. All in, I don't know what all in is.
Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you one tough question before we move off of this. Going into 2021, whether it be the spring SWAC season or the fall, will Jackson State finish anywhere in the top 2 or play in a championship game in their division or conference, fall or spring or fall 2021?
And I want to say it's too early to tell because you don't know who's opting, who's playing and who's not playing. I'm not even going to try to put this frame together.
They know.
I will give them. I give them second place in the fall. Okay. On second place in the wait a minute. Is Jackson State east or west now? Because I'm trying to remember.
They're
east.
They're still in the east with Florida A&M, Bethune,
Florida A&M, Bethune,
Alabama State,
Alabama A&M,
Mississippi Valley State.
No, just two of them. Two of them three.
You're being a homer. That's what they say. Anyone who's watching this is saying, "Oh, he's a FAMU grad. Look at that hat over his right shoulder. He's being a homer."
I'm not even just FAMU, but just Bethune. If a Quail Glass comes back to Alabama A&M, that's 3 teams right there that you have to put in front of Jackson State.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's why I asked a tough question. You answered it. All right. Well said. When we come back after this break, AD and I have a difference of opinion in the top 2 stories, but they're both our top 2 stories. Just one of us feels like one is one, and the other feels like his is number 1. So we'll tell you who has the number 1 story when we come back from this break. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back right after these words.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member. Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford, AD Drew here. Want to remind you again, make sure you are subscribed to the BCSN Sports Wrap and all of our platforms, especially the podcast version of the show, which you can find everywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure you are signed up with our Jericho Broadcast Network's app. That's where you can also be alerted to every time we go live with a show or every time we drop a show, you'll be alerted to that. And that's, you can go to Google or Apple Play stores, app stores, whatever they call them. And just search my JBN or my BCSN. And of course, the website, mybcsn.net. And that's where you can find all kinds of news and information, stories that we write, and also updates from your favorite HBCU or maybe just your favorite conference if you're just a fan of a particular conference. All right, Drew, we've got down to the final two. Again, just to recap our top 5 stories. Number 5 was Florida Memorial's attempt at a historic return to football. Number 4, number 4 was the Black Lives Matter movement on HBCUs and HBCU athletics. Number 3, Deion Sanders becoming the head coach, the 21st head football coach at Jackson State University. And now we get to our top 2 stories. And we both agree these are the top 2 stories, but we differ in opinion
on the order
as to which one is number 1.
Yeah.
So I will defer to you to start. I've done a lot of the talking. So I will let you start with yours, and we'll analyze it a little bit, and then I will talk about mine. And so, Drew, I give you your number 1 story of 2020 is.
I'm going to lead into that. Brian, I just looked at my notes.
Lead into it.
I got to lead into it. I just looked at my notes.
Hold on.
We forgot 3B. We forgot to mention the Mo Williams signing at Alabama State as part of our number 3 story.
The story really is Deion. Mo Williams coming apart is an additional story
of
another professional athlete that came into, but that's not bigger than Deion Sanders.
No, I didn't say it was bigger, but we had those related, and we forgot to mention that. I just wanted to, before we get to this. Now, here's where we differ in our opinions. And I released the article last week on conference churning. And yes, the changes in our HBCU conferences have been big. And normally you and I can come to a consensus when we get to these things. But my premise is COVID-19 has affected many things, just about everything on our list, including the conference churning, which is why I had to personally rank COVID-19's effect on HBCU seasons and the players of HBCU as my number 1 story for 2020.
So your number 1 story, say it again for everyone.
The COVID-19 and its effect on HBCU players, seasons, and the landscape of HBCU.
I was hoping you would give yours without tipping off what mine is, doggone it. But anyway, damn it. You don't know how to do. Anyway, I'm just messing. All right, so, okay, so I think we have a number of things that fall under the COVID-19. Yes. We've got, we had the no postseason basketball.
COVID-19 related.
We had the cancellation of spring sports because spring sports were happening at that time.
COVID-19 related.
So all of those students, lost they never had a finish to their seasons, never got a chance to.
Some of them never even got started.
Some didn't some spring sports start?
Most of them did get started, but yeah.
They just never got past
never got to conference play.
They never got to conference play middle of March, right?
Yes.
We had the cancellation of fall sports, which started with Well, of course, yeah. All of this is COVID related, Drew. Yeah, this is your segment. This is your segment. All of your COVID related stuff. Yeah, so I'm just putting it in a nice little package for everybody who may be wondering. It started with Morehouse. Morehouse being the first school to take off football and cross country off the board.
Yes.
And then what we get, we got the SIC. You did a great story releasing that, talking about the SIC. Then it led to
SIC and CIAA coming out together.
Yeah. Then they came out, did a joint thing, and then it just led into everybody else. Then we had so that was how the year started. Then as we got into the start of the year, it seemed like we had, no, you know what I forgot? I forgot also in the spring, the HBCU combine, the HBCU football combine, which was a first. It was going to be actually Deion Sanders being a part of that. Some people, I want to say the HBCU pro, wasn't the Black College Football Hall of Fame part of that? Maybe
I believe so.
Yeah, but anyway, that was supposed to be a great opportunity that gave these guys who most of them don't get invited to the main combine, the big one that we're all aware of that happens in Indianapolis. This was going to be a pro style. Hey, the same scouts, the NFL scouts that go to that are going to be at this. And there was a list. I mean, I had it up here. There was 27 offensive players, 24 defensive players. You had 38 guys from the FCS level, 12 from Division II, 1 NAIA player. By conference breakdown, you had 17 from the MEAC, 14 from the SWAC, 9 from the CIAA, 3 SIAC. Tennessee State had 5 guys. Hampton had 2 guys. Langston even had a player. So, I mean, you had this was going to be a big deal. This was supposed to be a game changer for the opportunity that would give that stepping stone for guys to really truly get an honest look from scouts. And it didn't happen. And then we saw what happened in the draft, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
Okay. Then we had going into the fall, we had the FMU closures. We had the volleyball team. You had the soccer teams. And then, of course, the football team that we mentioned. That falls under your COVID-related stuff. We had the semi-cancellation of the start of the winter season by some basketball programs. Bethune-Cookman, I believe it was Maryland Eastern Shore, pulled out completely.
Yes,
nothing.
Whole
departments, nothing. You had the women's basketball team at Florida A&M, like the week of their season about to start, they were going to play Florida State to start the season. Pulled out, nothing. They said the girls opted out, said, no, we don't want to play. And then we've had other things that have happened. We've had a lot of cancellations in games, the shuffling of schedules, all of it COVID related. And I think we're learning how to deal with it. We learn how to test it. We watch professional sports. You can't create bubbles in college. It's a little hard. You've got all these issues. I don't know if we're any smarter. I don't know if administrations and programs are any smarter, or just they're learning how to deal with it differently or better on a weekly basis. But what is going to be a big effect, Drew, and you talk about this for a second, the scholarship impact going into 2021 is going to be the big story of 2021
and
related
22
to COVID.
And 23.
Yeah.
And you talk about some of those schools who weren't playing. You had Clark Atlanta not playing. You had Lane, who had already opted out of playing. This is prior to the SIAC coming out with their announcement. Virginia State was not playing. I believe Johnson C. Smith was not playing. I believe the Atlanta schools not sure if Morehouse was playing. A lot of the schools had opted out because of one simple thing, Brian. They didn't have students on campus.
Right.
It was not only was it cost prohibitive, but it was also just did not make good sense to sum it up, to bring these 30 students back, 15 men, 15 women, plus the coaching staff, just to play basketball. Because that was the only reason they would be on campus, especially when you consider most of these schools were not going to start spring classes until February. At the earliest, most of these schools were not starting until after King Day.
Right.
So just did not make, just say that did not make good sense, as the old folk used to say. So go ahead.
And look, I have personally been all over the place. You know, I see the thing about what I always wrestle with is the data about how it affects our African American community is shown at its highest levels, oldest ages. Just across the board, we don't see, or we don't see on a significant scale, let me say that, how it affects younger people. And the fact that we see colleges playing, I mean, we're watching a bowl game now. We've got college basketball happening. We see even professional sports playing. The symptoms vary. There's so much we don't know, right? And young people have had the desire to want to play. And I guess for me, at times, I'm a big sports fan. I'm of that side of saying if they can play and play safely, let them play. But, I get, I don't think you need to have fans in the stands to play these games. Now, the bigger impact, I think, is financial. And very few people are honest about that. See, I think more people want to talk about health and safety of the student athletes, but it's probably a bigger look. If they were honest about the finances as well as the health and safety, I'd be okay with that. But I guess for me, I've never been okay with just hearing about the health and safety when, let's be real, the
if
thing
it don't
about
make
playing,
dollars, it don't make sense. Be real.
Right. But we're talking about, but here's where my first little red flag went off about health and safety. The minute they started talking about playing spring football, you know what no one talked about was concussions, the body. Can you really play an 8-game spring
ACLs
season? Can you really play an 8-game spring season, take just 3 months off, and then turn around in the fall season and say, hey guys, let's go back and play again? Can you really do that? Can the body, is that more impactful or harmful to the body than this virus? Nobody talks about that. So that's always been my red flag. And
yeah.
But I've learned how to adjust my thought processes with information, and I think we all should. I think we all, instead of just being just blatant about it, I think we make a living covering sports. If sports don't ever play, or if there's no hope of sports coming back, we're all doing day jobs wherever at other places, and that's not fun.
Well, we already doing day jobs in other places, but
yeah, but we get to talk about sports, and at least for right now, that's the fun part of this, right?
Yeah. But let's be real, Bryan. 2 weeks ago, what happened to Keontae Johnson when Florida was playing Florida State in whatever it's called? It was the Civic Center when we were in school there, and you and I have both been to events in the Civic Center during our time in Tallahassee. Let's be real. That scared the crap out of a lot of administrators, because what we all thought was our worst fear played out on national television when that young man collapsed at midcourt coming out of a timeout. And it was later found out that he subsequently was one of those players who was quarantined for COVID, and it has come out since then that he actually had COVID and something related to it.
It did come out. He had COVID. I had not heard that he had COVID.
Yeah, obviously you can't confirm it because that's HIPAA information. But the reports are that he had COVID and has something to do with it, possibly a large heart as a result of complications from COVID. And now he's acting as a student coach for the remainder of this season. And let's hope this young man becomes healthy first and is able to live a normal life, and then maybe ultimately get to his dream of getting to the league, because he was a lottery pick waiting to happen.
I am empathetic, sympathetic to that one player, but my only, again, I will go to, I'm gonna be on the other side of it, in just the fact that it's one case. Now, don't ask me how many cases does it take for me. It's not that I don't take it seriously, but I think we all have to be realistic, maybe, or we have to be, I can't find the right word, but every time we're talking one case, a small case. I mean, Florida didn't stop playing basketball. Florida men's program didn't start. You noticed that, right? They're still playing games. They played a game the other day, yesterday, matter of fact. You know, so
here's the thing, Brian. You know, we talk about that caring, nurturing thing that we expect from our HBCU. When you, as a parent, send your 18-year-old child to whatever state, A&M, whatever university or college that they go to, and you entrust them to that coach, to the athletic department, and to that university president, you expect those people to deliver your child back to you in 4 to 5 years with a degree and healthy. That's that one difference why you see the HBCUs move in a different manner than you've seen the HWCUs move, because of that caring nature that we have historically at our HBCUs. That's why going back to our number 5 story, that's why, as people were finding out about some of the things that allegedly happened at Florida Memorial, a lot of people who look like you and me, who have the HBCU experience, were really concerned, because that goes against the basic mission of every HBCU that has ever been in existence.
Look, that's a great point, Drew. I hear your point. That's well said. I can't. I'm not going to debate that now at this point, because that was a mic drop. Honestly, that was pretty nice. So I will table my other thoughts for another day. So yeah, it's not that I didn't think this COVID-19 story was the most important story, because it is. I mean, we just talked about all the things that affected athletics, but I also feel like in 5 years from now, I think this COVID-19 effect on things will be hopefully just a blip in the history timeline of athletics. I feel like my number 1 story of the year actually will have a more long-term effect on HBCUs in general. And my number 1 is the conference churning. The story, as you called it in your editorial, 2020, the year of the HBCU exodus.
Which I stole actually from a phrase that you used in one of our previous interviews.
Yes. And of course, we stole the conference churning from our friend, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill. So it's all love.
So it's all plagiarism.
Oh, well, it's not plagiarism, but it's all within
borrowing. We're
borrowing. It's all borrowing within the Jericho broadcast network's family. There it is.
There you go.
Yeah. So you wrote a great summary of the Exodus. And just, if you haven't read Drew's article, when you go to mybcsn.net and you go to the news section, and you can find it there. From the minds of BCSN is where you will see that article. But it's a great summary breakdown where you had the effect on what takes place, or what took place, starting with North Carolina A&T State in February, their decision to leave the MEAC and go to the Big South, which I think is part of a move by them to want to move up to another level. I think for them, the success they had within the football realm, even some basketball success, track and field, I think they have a desire to want to be one of those mid-majors. I think they want to be a part of a conference like the Sun Belt, yeah, Sun Belt or something like that. I think that's their desire, in my opinion. And maybe that comes from pay attention to the leadership of these schools too, people. If you pay attention to the leadership, the new leadership over the past year at North Carolina A&T State, you'll start to see where they may be going, in my opinion.
Because these people who were associated with the Sun Belt Conference.
Yes, and so A&T's departure from the MEAC followed up along with Hampton's departure, and Hampton you're starting to see have a little bit of success at the new level. You've already seen the fact that Tennessee State in Ohio Valley is what it is, and so I think then you had the FAMU and Bethune-Cookman moves, which those three moves in 1 year pretty much puts the MEAC in a situation of, I think in the next 12 months, they gotta figure it out, man. They have to do something, or they're gonna lose some other schools. I mean, we already saw schools that were actively
Delaware State and Norfolk State have had meetings on the record about their future.
Yes.
In the MEAC.
Yes. So I mean, they're beginning to start the process of figuring out, hey, this isn't looking good. It's not looking good, and we need to be prepared to move if things go south. So, and I think schools like Howard, they have enough already relationships with other sports. I mean, you've done some great analysis on this. So I mean, I don't want to, I'm talking to you. You already know. But
talk to the fans.
Yeah. And then so you had also, you talked about the Allen University moving from division from NAIA to the Division II level. They will be part of the SIAC. You've got Xavier. This is what I think. And my first question for you is, which one of these moves was the most significant? And I frame it because I think there's two. There's the collective, not just A&T, but I think the FAMU and Bethune moved from the MEAC to the SWAC versus Xavier and Talladega leaving the GCAC to go to the Red River and the Southern States Athletic Conference, respectively. Two schools from two different, choosing to leave and go other places. Which do you think is a more significant move?
That's a tough question. I'm going to say this, and I actually think the Talladega and Xavier move from the GCAC is probably going to wind up being more significant long-term than FAMU and Bethune going to the SWAC. Let me break that down. It's been rumored for years that FAMU's been going to the SWAC. No secret about it. Where FAMU goes, Bethune goes. Always has been like that. FAMU left the SIAC, Bethune left the SIAC. FAMU joined the MEAC, Bethune joined the MEAC. So they go, those two will always move in sync with each other. That move actually kind of benefited the MEAC because none of those teams from the Maryland, Virginia area wanted to make that trip down to Florida every year. And because of the schedule, they had to make that trip multiple times a year in multiple sports. By eliminating that Florida team, those two Florida teams, actually ultimately may put the MEAC in a better position if they can find other partners to come in with. The move that hurt the MEAC was the A&T move. Bethune and Fan moving was not the big move. The A&T move was bigger with A&T's ulterior motive. Hopefully, there's been rumblings in the MEAC and at Maryland Eastern Shore about them restarting their one-story football program. So maybe the other universities can help, or they could pull some money out the MEAC coffers to help Maryland Eastern Shore get their football program going, and then maybe pulling in another team or two in order to shore up the conference.
Well, there's a lot of I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go. What you gonna say? Before I get on in
No, I was just gonna throw in there that there's a lot of student athletes that are in transfer portals that need a home. So it's a great time for Maryland Eastern Shore to restart their program.
Hey, good point. Great point. Now, why the Xavier Talladega move was bigger for the GCAC? First of all, let's take it back to last year, 2019, to understand why this move is bigger. 2019, July 2019, Edward Waters announces that the SIAC extends a bid to Edward Waters to come join their conference. Subsequently, Edward Waters plays a 2019 football schedule in the SIAC as they explore their opportunities to not only move up to Division II, but to move into the SIAC. That move is expected to be announced in 2021, may be delayed slightly because of COVID, but that move is still expected to be announced in 2021, whether they're moving up and whether they will move into the SIAC. They are moving to the SIAC or another, I believe it's the ASUN conference. That's the Division II conference that's based primarily in Florida. They'll probably be moving to one of those two conferences. That's number one. December, SUNO, because of financial considerations, decides to suspend all athletics. So we've lost Edward Waters. We've lost Southern University New Orleans. You only had 8 to start with. You're down 2. So you're potentially at 6 going into 2021. Out of nowhere, Xavier makes the thug move, because nobody was looking for Xavier to make this move, and skips town and goes to the Red River. At that same time, sources told us that Talladega was also leaving, but we did not report it out of respect to our sources and protecting our sources. But we knew Talladega was leaving. It was just a matter of when. And honestly, I almost forgot about it. I had actually started putting my research together for the article when Talladega announced their move, because I had forgot Talladega had said that they were moving. Why did Xavier and Talladega move? They moved to conferences that sponsor more automatic bids because they sponsor more sports. The two conferences that they moved to sponsor 16 championships. GCAC only sponsors 10 championships in men and women's athletics.
Right.
Both of these schools have good softball programs, which GCAC has softball, but they do not sponsor baseball. Do not sponsor tennis. Do not sponsor some of the other things, golf, some of these other sports where Talladega and Xavier play. So in order to get everybody into the same conference competing, dealing with the same set of people, these two schools made the move, felt like they had to make the move to a different conference. And personal opinion, I don't think Talladega is done. I think they may be setting themselves up for a move to Division II down the line.
Interesting. Okay. So what was the move that you thought was the most puzzling?
I don't think any of them were puzzling. The one that I was curious about was Allen when it was announced that Allen was going to Division II, and it was whether they were going CIAA or whether they were going SIAC, because both of them, they fit perfectly into both. The crosstown from Benedict, which is in the SIAC, natural travel partner. Allen and Benedict will be travel partners now in the SIAC, but they're also close enough to Claflin, which is in the CIAA, and all those schools in the Carolinas, which once again, easy travel for Allen. Allen was actually sitting in the best position when they made their choice between CIAA and SIAC. The G move was A&T.
Yeah. Yeah, that I agree. I agree with you on that, man. A&T, but again, like I said, I think A&T has a different vision for where they want to go. And I think they are probably the only Division I. Well, see, I wonder. It's funny they move in with Hampton. See, I think Howard and Norfolk State would be a good fit with A&T in a different level. But again, you know, I don't know if that's their mindset. I just see when I try to look at things from a social media perspective. When I think of all the things that I see Norfolk State doing, Norfolk State, in my opinion, is doing things, I feel like, at a high Division I type level. Like their production and timing and the things that they're doing, it matches up with what I see other major Division I, even mid-major programs doing. I mean, they are really forcing. I think they're on top of their game. I mean, I know Jackson State has gotten a lot of social media buzz, but when I just look at the quality of what it is they're producing and what they're doing, even from media perspectives, pay attention to Norfolk State over the next few years. Somewhere along the line over the last few years, Norfolk State made a shift and has really changed the amount of and how they are doing their exposure and marketing. And they haven't publicly created a bunch of Twitter feeds and all this other stuff that some other schools are doing. Not gonna put anybody out there, but I'm just saying, pay attention to Norfolk State, because I think I would not be surprised if they are the first MEAC school to jump somewhere else. I just it's a gut feeling based off
Patriot
what
or Big South?
Huh?
Patriot or Big South?
Oh, I think it'll be Big South.
Okay.
If the numbers match up for the Big South, I think it's Big South. I don't think it'd be Patriot. No, I don't think it'd be Patriot. I think they're better. Again, because of the Hampton opportunity to rebrand that rivalry, which goes back to the CIAA days. If I had a choice between jumping back into bed with Hampton versus trying a cold bed that I'm not familiar with, I got to go jump over there with A&T that I know, and especially I know Hampton. And I mean, you know, so
I'm gonna throw something else, A&T, with this move to the Big South, and it's really gonna open up a market even bigger for them, the Atlanta market.
Okay.
What Big South team is in Atlanta?
Kennesaw.
Exactly. Now, those kids out of the Atlanta area, hey, you get to come home and play Kennesaw State. So you get to play at home. Come on over here to A&T, get this HBCU experience, and you still get to go back home and play in front of your family and friends.
Yeah. All right. So let's just recap our top 5 stories again. A top 5. Number 5, Florida Memorial trying to revived their historic football program. Number 4, the Black Lives Matter movement for HBCUs. Number 3, Deion Sanders to Jackson State / Mo Williams to Alabama State. Don't want to forget that. Number 2, now my number 2, but AD's number 1 was the COVID-19 effect on HBCU seasons and players. And my number 1, but AD's number 2 was the conference churning and some of the moves that have been made. And so that is our top 5. Let's end this show, AD, by just talking about go through sort of some of the names, significant names that we lost in the HBCU sports world. And apologies if we leave anyone out, but trying to go back through the list of the year. And of course, just in the sports world in general, let me, if you would let me start there, Drew. I think just in the sports world in general, when you think about, we lost icons such as Kobe Bryant, Gale Sayers, John Thompson, Wes Unseld, Bobby Mitchell. Those are names that for you and I, and maybe probably I'd say anyone over 35, maybe, especially Kobe, definitely over 30. But
Kobe is universal right now.
Yeah, so I'd say 40 and up. Those other names are hopefully significant in terms of athletic icons. And we can even say, and then sort of transitioning to an HBCU level, we had Tavares Jackson, who tragically died at the age of 36 back in April. And of course, he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings in the second round of the 2006 NFL draft from Alabama State. He was the first FCS or Division I AA player, quarterback drafted in that year.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Excuse me. Let me hold on a second. He was the first FCS player overall, regardless of position, taken in that draft. Yeah. He was the 5th quarterback taken in that draft.
And he's the last HBCU quarterback to be drafted.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. He more importantly went to Alabama State. During his time with the Hornets, his 3-year career, passed for over 7,800 yards, 67 touchdowns, led the Hornets to the SWAC championship in consecutive 10-win seasons. I believe they won it in 2004, and I think they may have come up as a runner-up in either the year before or the year after. I can't recall. I think it was maybe the year before. He was an all-SWAC player his senior year. I think it was the year before when they went and lost, but that was Tavares Jackson. That was, he was tragically killed. I think it was a car accident.
Auto accident on a rainy day.
Yeah.
And a road that I've actually been down that road many a time. So I say, and you forgot the most important stat, Bryan, that you left out with Tavares Jackson.
Yeah.
What was his Turkey Day record against Tuskegee? I'm just joking. 1 and 2.
Okay. Wow, Drew. You're always with the Tuskegee reference. Nice. We lost some coaching legends. When we talk about legends and icons within HBCU, 4 significant coaching legends that passed away during 2020. You had Marino Kasem of Alcorn State. He was a head football coach, 4-time HBCU national champion at Alcorn State. He passed away also in April at the age of 85. Then you had Ken Riley, former Florida A&M quarterback with Jake Gaither. He became a head coach, and then he also became an athletic director that brought, I believe he brought
Brought Billy Joe in.
Brought Billy Joe to FAMU. Yeah.
Yes. Billy Joe
became one of
replaced
the,
him.
Yes, he became also, he was a great defensive back with Cincinnati Bengals during the 70s and 80s. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame. I know there's been several campaigns he should be in there when you look at him statistically. And unfortunately, he was lost, and we'll never get to see that honor, but hopefully posthumously that day will come. Then you also had W.C. Gordon, a Jackson State coach, in the 80s, was dominant. Jackson State, and when Jackson State people now talk about the golden era, they're talking about the W.C. Gordon era. I think most recently, the more recent folks are talking about that period of the 80s when Jackson State was dominant. And then more recently, you had, this just happened not too long ago, you had Jack Cy McLaren, who was a football and basketball coach at Bethune-Cookman. He led Bethune-Cookman to several SIAC championships and Division II tournament appearances, who passed away slightly before Christmas. We also lost Edward Waters, assistant and Fayetteville State alumnus Cornelius Corprew, excuse me. He passed away in September. So, we had an opportunity to work with Edward Waters. I can't say I actually knew Coach, but I know that Edward Waters' family, and that was a tough loss for them. And then you had some other, we talked about Tavares Jackson, but you also had some other HBCU athletic related individuals.
You got George Knock from Morgan State.
Yep.
Back during the CIAA days at Morgan State in the 60s. Mike Gale, Elizabeth City State. In the 60s, he played in the ABA and in the NBA. Person who I grew up watching, the old Bush Stadium, Lou Brock, Southern University alum in September. And even though he's not an HBCU alum, Bob Gibson, also of the St. Louis Cardinals. Gibson retired before I was too young to have seen him pitch, but he was a living legend for the Cardinals, who I grew up rooting for. Curly Neal, Harlem Globetrotters, famously from the Harlem Globetrotters, Johnson C. Smith. So those are a couple of the people. And St. Augustine president Dr. Irving McPhail passed away due to complications from COVID. And then, of course, the coup de grace, the Black Panther himself, Chadwick Boseman of Howard University, in a non-sports related death, but still a HBCU passing.
Yeah, definitely. And, besides some of the stuff that, we were able to kind of find, shout out to HBCU Game Day for, they did a good article, write-up on some of the iconic guys, some of the legends who passed away from the year from 2020. Also want to mention a young man, Jordan Cofield from Morgan State, young student athlete from Morgan State, passed away. I believe that happened in August. So, and again, if there's any play, I don't want to say significant, but if there was anybody that we didn't name from the HBCU sports world, or it wasn't done.
One other one, if you talked about current students, D'Angelo Strickland, who was a grad student, played basketball at Fort Valley, was killed in a car crash back in September of this year. He was 22 years old.
Yeah, it's always tough trying to pull these kind of stories together at the end, but we wanted to make sure to give them give a proper mention of them to sort of put a bow on this recap of 2020. And so that will do it. We will close the book on don't do it, Drew. You look like you want to add something. Don't do it.
Hey,
no.
Before we go, New Year's resolution.
I thought you're not supposed to give your New Year's resolution.
Oh, okay. We'll hold it in there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were supposed to give them.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get a little healthier. I really got to put that on my priority list. I'm thankful that mentally I feel good, but physically I need to do better. So that's it. I'm thankful to be doing what I'm doing and have an opportunity to let me just give a quick shout out to I'm gonna see if I can think of the different people that we've talked to this year and just contributors. I know there's Mo Carter in Birmingham. I know he did a couple shows with us in our SWAC reveal, right? I know we did that. Kofi Hemingway joined us. I remember Kofi joined us when we got into talking about the FAMU joining the SWAC.
I believe the Bethune also.
Bethune as well. So shout out to Kofi. Of course, we've had a couple of shows. Obviously, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, Charles Bishop has joined us for a couple of shows, especially when we talked about Deion joining Jackson State, Mike Washington. So shout out to those guys for being a part of
Trevin Jones.
Yeah, Trevin. I think in 2021, the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association, watch out for that.
Michael Coker.
Yeah, Michael Coker has been a part of our show and worked with us.
Black College Nines.
Black College Nines. I look forward to seeing and really paying attention to what they do with the upcoming baseball season. Who I feel like anybody else that I'm contributors.
I'm going to shout out some of the SIDs and athletic departments who've been helpful with us disseminating information for us. Obviously, to start off with Edward Waters and Joshua Jackson, your play-by-play man on Edward Waters football. This for the last 2 years, actually.
Yeah.
As he's had to take over basketball broadcasting duties during this time of COVID. JT down at Florida Memorial would be another one. Travis Jerome at Alabama State.
Right.
Ed Kasser at Xavier University has been good to us. Mike Beal at Norfolk was with us for an interview. I'm just trying to think of some of the SIDs that we've talked to, because those are the ones who really do the dirty work as far as getting the information out.
Yeah, we're very thankful to the athletic directors, the coaches from the different programs that we've talked to, the sports information directors.
Dr. Kiki Baker Barnes with the GCAC, very, very open as a commissioner. With Dr. Charles McClellan, been on here multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, we've been very blessed and fortunate to have athletic commissioner. I think we've had just about almost every commissioner this past year from different conversations.
Everybody but the SIAC.
Yes. I think you upset them, but anyway, just joking. But we love them all. It's all love, all jokes, all love. We appreciate, I mean, this has been a great year for us. Outstanding year. Thank you for all the support you've given. Share our show. That's the big, for 2020, our biggest goal, our biggest hope and wish, if you want to bless us with something, bless us by sharing this show. However you're listening to it, share it with 2 people. Share it with 2 people, maybe 3, and let them know, hey, this is a pretty good show. These guys can talk for a long time to get a little long-winded, but it's a good show. If you like it, if you don't like it, still share it and just, whatever, but
Get
rate
black eyes and greens for the new year.
Is that what it is? Black eyed peas and greens, right?
Black eyed peas and greens, black eyed peas and cabbage. Depends on what part of the country you're in. But
all right. So by the time they see this, though, it'll be a new year. So we want to say last year was great, and we're looking forward to an exciting 2021.
Thank God it's over.
Amen. Amen. And with that said, make sure you're following at my BCSN1, the number 1. Follow Drew at BCSN Drew. Follow me at DRB365. For our executive producer, Roy Evans, who helps bring us all together and keep this Jericho Broadcast Networks thing afloat. And for my partner, Drew, it's been a great year, man. God bless you. And I hope we have a great year 2021 together. Would it be year number 3 or 4 with us? 4. Look at that. We're going into year 4, Drew.
We gonna be seniors.
Going into the senior year, baby. Gotta love it.
Gotta get the class ring now.
Exactly. For my partner, A.D. Drew, I am Bryan Fulford. Thank you. God bless. Happy New Year. And we look forward to an exciting 2021 with you and the BCSN Sports Wrap and the Black College Sports Network. Peace out.
Hey, 2020. I holler, for real. I holler 2020. But my beats, they are hard.